everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, this epic quest of awesomeness, and looking a little green around the gills is our resident anime gods, the cat. Cat, what's up?
Hi everybody. I have a sinus infection that won't go away after antibiotics. And work is really stressful, so I'm very tired. I would like the sleeps, please. Many, many sleeps.
And on the opposite end of the spectrum, full of vim and vigor and excitement, is Mike the Birdman. Mike, how you doing?
I'm fucking awesome, man. I am feeling particularly good tonight. I took some of my pain medication because sitting on your butt all day when you literally can't do anything sucks. So it's been an interesting afternoon. It's a good time.
Share.
Oh,
Sharing
I
is
so
caring.
would.
Sharing is caring.
Oh, I'm good. I'm so good today. It's nice.
Okay. All right. Well, we got a fun episode for you guys this week. Today we are going to be talking about something light and fun and easy as we kind of wind down close to into the holidays. We're going to talk about our favorite childhood cartoons. We're talking about the cartoons that we like to watch coming up, because we've talked about like specific cartoons over the course of the show. We've done like reviews or retrospective stuff, but we never actually talked about like what cartoons we watched coming up and what was formative to us. So we thought that'd be a fun discussion topic to go into. But of course, there's procedure to follow. So we're going to begin, as always, with Ask Geek, and we got some questions here. So let's see here now. All right. Okay. Here is one for me, and this one comes from Mark, and his question is: Are there any consoles that I absolutely refuse to collect for? Not absolutely refuse. There are consoles I don't collect for because I can't really play them comfortably, like the PSP and by extension the Vita. I know I've mentioned this on the show before, but I have very large hands, and the PSP and the Vita were not designed for someone with large sausage fingers like mine. For context, even just to play my 3DS, I had to get this extra large grip to slip onto it in order for me to hold it comfortably. And even the Switch, I can't use. If I'm playing it in handheld, I can't use the regular Joy-Con. I had to get the Split Pad Pro to hold it comfortably without my fucking fingers going numb. So it's not a case of I absolutely refuse to collect for the PSP or the Vita. It's just I can't hold them and play them comfortably. I do have a PlayStation TV that's currently packed up. I've got some Vita games for it that I really wanted, like Persona 4 Golden and Dragon's Crown. But I mean, those are really the only ones that I really have. There's just not a lot on the PSP or the Vita to begin with that really excites me, or that in the case of the Vita, that I can't get elsewhere. I also don't really make a big thing about collecting PC games, just because there's so fucking many that trying to assemble a complete library is an exercise in futility. And also because I'm one of those people that if I'm gonna collect PC games, I'm gonna collect the full big box release. And that takes up a lot of space. Now, that said, there are some big box PC games that I do have. I have the StarCraft 2 trilogy, which Mike was kind enough to gift me. And I also have a copy of a 1996 sim-style game called Deadlock, which was a game that I played a lot as a child. And so when I saw that in the store, I was like, ooh, sealed in box. I'm going to snatch that up. So I just bought that for nostalgia's sake. But for the most part, I don't really like collecting for non-Nintendo handhelds, or I don't really seek out a bunch of big box PC games. All right, and let's see here now. Okay, this question is from Megan, and her question is, what is a movie that has been the biggest disappointment to you? And let's just go ahead and open this up to everybody. What's a movie that you're really excited for, but just turned out to be the biggest disappointment you'd ever seen? So, Mike, let's start with you.
One really easy one for me would have been probably the RoboCop remake from 2014. I thought the initial design was cool, where they showed him in the new Iron Man style, kind of black armor, but he does have the silver at one point, and I was hoping we'd see him more in the silver. But ultimately, the movie was just so largely forgettable that it's really disappointing. I can tell you every single action beat that happens across all three movies. I can quote each of them almost endlessly. But RoboCop 2014, all I remember is him choking Batman. So the guy from Suicide Squad chokes Batman and says, "What did you do to me?" And he fights Rorschach from The Watchmen. That's all I can tell you about that movie. And that really disappointed me. And I would think most people would have expected me to say Ghostbusters 2016, but no, I was pleasantly surprised by that movie, and I will die on this hill that I like that movie, all things considered. But yeah, those would probably be my two really big disappointments.
See, RoboCop, RoboCop I've seen too, and yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I could not tell you anything. Searching through my memory, I could not tell you anything that happens in that movie, except for the scene where Murphy wants to see like the extent of the damage that's done to him, and they just strip away all the RoboCop parts piece by piece until he's just like a head and a pair of lungs, and he's just freaking out. Oh my God, there's nothing left.
Yep,
I'm just like,
that's the only scene too.
That was a great scene. And I absolutely love that scene and like the pathos that added to the character, but unfortunately it was the only scene of its kind in that movie. So, but anyway, Kat, what about you? Biggest disappointment movie that you've ever seen?
Oh my God. I guess I'd probably have to go with the Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides.
It's the fourth one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the fourth one. Because one, by then the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise was so tired. Like it was really good for one movie, and the second movie was pretty good. And then by the time you get to the third movie, you're just sick to fucking death of Johnny Depping all over the screen. Like, being weird is not does not a movie make.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas would disagree with you, but that's a discussion for another table.
Yeah, but that's not doing the same thing for 3 movies. And then they made a 4th one. And they were like, okay, well, we don't want to have all the same people in it, so we'll get rid of these people who aren't interesting, which was Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom. And then all the chemistry died. Because these characters actually had chemistry with one another. So these 3 actors had interesting chemistry with one another. And they took those 2 out, and then the whole movie is just like, every single thing is so forced. It's just boring. Like, none of the new characters are interesting. None of them have, like, the charm that any of the other characters had. And it's just not good all around not good. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief that you're like, okay, well, as the movies had gotten progressively dumber, my suspension of disbelief had just gotten less and less. So by the time the last one comes around, you're like, I don't believe that any of this could have happened. Like, you can have like zombie pirates. You can sell me on that. But you can't sell me on what's her face pretending to be Johnny Depp for a whole however long she did it for. It's like, no, nobody would buy that. Nobody would buy that. Like, it's just a bad film. And every time they kick around the idea of doing more, like, I just want to shake somebody and say, like, they weren't that good, you guys. There was one that was that good. None were worth doing literally more films. It's sort of like Jaws, but on a different spectrum.
Don't you wish, Kat?
You only needed one. You didn't need the rest.
Don't you wish, Kat, you had the power to become invisible, and then in these huge executive meetings with all these powerful people, you have a squirt bottle, and whenever somebody brings up this movie, just squirt, 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 and they don't know where it's coming from. You are the bane of the Disney executive offices. Whenever a bad idea comes up, you are there.
Yeah, basically that. You just want to go, stop, stop. And you just like whisper in their ear, and maybe they'll think it's their own conscience telling them to stop. Not that I believe anybody at Disney has a conscience, but still, like, somebody just needs to say, like, this actually isn't going to make that much money, so, you know, your baseline isn't even that strong.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple, both of which we've actually covered on the show. So I've said before that one of my perpetual disappointments is video game movies, and probably my biggest was the Ratchet and Clank movie, which Kat will tell you, like when that was announced, I was like so excited because it was a video game movie that was actually about the game world and the game characters, and this is the one that really got me excited. They actually got the voice actors from the games to play their roles in the film. I was like, yes, this is everything I want from a video game movie. And then Ratchet and Clank wind up being guest stars in their own movie. And I was like, really, this is just it was so disappointing because like you had everything, you had all the building blocks right there for a great, family film, and you wind up screwing it up with celebrity guest stars. The other big disappointment it was Hitman Agent 47, which I was really excited about because I'm a huge Hitman fan. Like I absolutely love the Hitman series, and as I mentioned in our review of the movie, Hitman has a very specific tone. It's very slow paced, very okay. How's he gonna get him? Sort of feel to it. Agent 47 in the games is almost as he's almost not even a character. He's really more of just like a force of nature. But they wound up turning the Hitman Agent 47 a a James Bond cross Jason Statham super action film. Like, there's at one point a scene where 47 shoots down a helicopter with a handgun. I'm like, no, that's Transporter, not Hitman. So yeah, those are my two big disappointments movie wise.
I still haven't seen Ratchet and Clank.
It's really not worth it. Play the games. That's you don't even bother with the movie. The movie was like, it's not the worst film I've ever seen, but it is the biggest case of wasted potential I've ever seen. So especially when you consider, like, we're talking with Pirates of the Caribbean and how they boot that to death with sequels. Ratchet and Clank as a story concept, because it's been around so long, there's a lot of great stories that they could mine for films or TV series, and they just wound up dropping the ball so hard on that. Okay, let's see. Next question here. Ready? And let's see. I had one here for Kat. What did I do with it?
Boot to the head.
Okay, all right, here it is. All right. Okay, and here is one for Kat, and this one is from Denise, and her question is, we know that you are a dice hoarder. What is your favorite set of dice that you own, and what is your set of dream dice?
Oh goodness. Oh goodness. So my favorite set that I own is a set that I had commissioned with some shark teeth, some fossilized shark teeth that I got at a beach. I used to do a lot of beach combing for fossilized shark teeth when I was young. Just there on the shores of Maryland. And so I reached out to somebody and said, hey, how much would this cost? She gave me an estimate. I literally mailed her shark teeth. And these are like fossilized shark teeth, so they are millions of years old, but extremely common. Sent her some shark teeth, and she made me some dice. She put like little shells in them and like deliberately creatively added bubbles into them so that it looks like it's under the sea. It's got like sand in it. They're very, very cool. One of a kind. Just really, really cool.
Wow, those are way cooler than some of the dice I've got.
Yes. But I paid a lot of money for them, so they'd better be good.
For dice, for me, I figured I'd just kind of jump in. I got a set from a company called Artisan Dice, probably about almost 10 years ago now, at least. And they're made out of this Texas cherry wood. They smell really cool. And they're like super expensive. They're worth like hundreds of dollars. I'm thinking, all right, that's cool. I only use them whenever I go out to play at public events because I'm a show off and I'm evil. And this next dice is actually kind of special because it now holds a special place in my heart specifically. So last year, Wizards of the Coast sent me a Swarovski crystal encrusted D20. And the reason this dice is special, not because I got it from Wizards, It's because of what happened afterwards. So, a friend of one of the shows that I work on is called Terrible Warriors, the other roleplay podcast that I used to do and still kind of do stuff with now. Either way, long story short, there was a fan of the show named Andrew, and Andrew used to be a really huge fan. He'd talk with us all the time. We actually had a chance to play with him a few times. And unfortunately, he got really, really, really sick. And he kind of dropped off of our Discord, kind of dropped off of the radar, but his Patreon was still kind of coming in or something. So we find out this year that he unfortunately passed away from some form of cancer. And we went digging through the archives, found out his episodes that he did with us on the podcast. And he wrote in his obituary, or his final wishes, I guess, I want you people to spend some money or do something that makes you happy and would be nice for you to remember me by. So I bought a dice jail from Amazon, and it looks like a gyroscope or something. And something about that spoke to me. So I had my friend build it, because I'll literally snap anything, because I'm terrible at building things. And I put that Swarovski dice on it, inside of it. It'll never come out. And when I get a chance to go to a mall again, I might actually get his name engraved on it, just to remember Chad, son of Bob, hero of Ravenloft. The most ridiculous name ever, but that kid was a laugh a minute. So yeah, those are the two cool dice that I've got.
Now for Dream Dice, not to be too repetitive, but I still have more shark teeth. And there's somebody else I want to commission for it. The creator of Dispel Dice, which is that really huge Kickstarter. I kind of have a little bit of an in with that particular company, and so I'm kind of hoping that perhaps the opportunity might arise that I could commission her for some more shark teeth.
That'd be really cool.
She just does. If you've never seen Dispel Dice, just Google it. They are stunning sharp edge dice. I backed the first Kickstarter. I didn't back the second one because I have a serious problem that I need to address about my dice sorting. Yeah. My dream dice though is whatever Kickstarter I'm still waiting on, which is at least one.
Oh wow! I want bone teeth, or not bone teeth, because those I have.
Bone teeth. No. Oh God.
Since I'm indigenous, if I can find out what my spirit animal is, if you told me, hey Mike, we're gonna make you some dice out of the bones of a bear, that would be awesome. Or a wolf, or a fox, or something like that. That would be really, really, really awesome. It's a way for me to keep in touch with my culture. And, here's a D20. I just kicked your ass with crit damage. That would be awesome to me.
Since you have artisan dice already, if you check out their website, they do have ones that are made out of bone. Not like a bear or a wolf or anything, but I've definitely been to their website because they have, or had at some point, the most expensive dice I've ever seen, which were made out of mammoth tusk.
Oh, wow.
And it was like $2,000 per die or some ridiculous thing like that.
Holy shit.
But that website has like legit crazy priced. Like, yeah, wow. Check it out sometime. It's wild.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's see. Next question here. This one comes from Adil, and he asks, are any Etsy fans on the staff, and what's your favorite purchase from an Etsy shop? So I'll go ahead and start with this one, because I've actually purchased a couple of things from Etsy shops. One of which was a gift, and one of those was for me. The one for me, I found this guy who he makes these acrylic. He basically makes acrylic signage, and he makes stuff for with sports team emblems for man caves or stuff like that. Real professional grade quality stuff. Well, I really wanted for my game room, for my Nintendo Switch shelf, I wanted to get a good quality Nintendo Switch logo sign but I couldn't find one anywhere until I found this guy's shop, and I actually commissioned him to make me this 12 by 12 Nintendo Switch logo that's hanging up on the side of my Switch shelf right now, and it just looks really awesome. The other thing that I bought, and this was the gift, so and Kat will know what I'm talking about once I start describing it. But my sister is a huge fan of the TV show Supernatural. So, like every other girl in the 2000s was apparently, because like yeah, I apparently can't swing a dead cat without hitting a Supernatural fan, but that's neither here nor there.
Fact.
So, well, for her birthday, not this year, but last year, I decided I wanted to get her something, something that, we kind of have this birthday gift arms race going where, we try and one up the previous person's birthday gift. So, for my birthday in 2019, she got me a Doctor Who print that was signed by like 4 of the doctors, including Matt Smith and Paul McGann. So I was like, okay, all right, her birthday's in February. I got to really bring my A game here. So I was like, okay, what's something that she's really big into? Okay, Supernatural. I know shit about Supernatural, so what's something I can get Supernatural related that she'd be really into? So I just, went on Etsy and just typed Supernatural and found this person who made a replica of the cult, which apparently I don't know the story behind it, but it's this like ornate Colt revolver that apparently can like kill anything in creation.
Yeah, it's a cool gun.
Yeah. So this person made a replica of a steel machined replica of the Colt revolver with little prop bullets to go with it, and in a nice oak wood case. And I was like, yes, that right there. And she absolutely loved it. She was geeking out about that for a long time after I got that for her. So I'd say those are my two my two big Etsy purchases. I also got most of my dice for our D&D show off of Etsy. There is one thing that I would really love to purchase, but it's really expensive, and I don't have the money for it right now. But I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the show, but my favorite RPG on the Switch is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It's my favorite RPG on the Switch. And custom Joy-Cons are a big thing right now. Well, there's this one Etsy shop that I found that does custom Joy-Cons in the colors and design of Pyra and Mithra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And I was like, those would look so awesome on my Switch, but they're $250 for a set. I don't have that money right now. So, yeah. Kat, what about you? Favorite Etsy purchase? And I'm not going to let you use your shark teeth dice again. You've got to come up with a second one.
Damn, because I did actually commission those via Etsy, so technically. Let's see, because I buy a lot of things on Etsy. I mean, So, I'm actually going through my Etsy list, my purchase list. One of the best things I've bought is still dice related. I bought a really big dice bag, like one of the mega fucking huge dice bags with sectioned pockets. The outside is black and it's made to look like it's got like sort of a textured pattern to it. It makes it look like crocodile scales or something along those lines. And then the interior is Beauty and the Beast fabric. And it holds all of my dice somehow. Well, not all of my dice, because some of my dice come in special boxes. But kind of once I fill that up, that's it for me. But that's going to be one of my most favorite recent purchases. But I do buy a lot on Etsy because I work in a hospital. And I have to wear a scrub cap every day, all day at work. And there's a lady who makes scrub caps at work and sells them for pretty cheap, but not in as many interesting fabrics as I would like. So I go on to Etsy every couple of months and buy myself a couple more scrub caps. So I have like ones with donuts and planets, and I bought some Halloween ones that I was just wearing. But yeah, I think my favorite purchase is indeed that dice bag, since it's certainly one of the most useful things I've bought on there.
Okay. Mike, what about you? Any Etsy purchases you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I've got two, kind of like one that was for me, and then one that was a gift for someone. The one that was for me, this is just a little bit before Etsy, but they had a shop. I commissioned a replica weapon from Mass Effect, and I had a replica N7 Hurricane, which is the SMG you got if you pre-ordered the game for the collector's edition back in 2011 or whatever it was. And it had a functioning trigger, it lit up, it was properly weighted, it had polymer for its grips. It was gorgeous. And it was stolen from me at a convention one year, and it was signed by Mark Meir, who's Commander Shepard and a personal friend of mine. So I had another one commissioned for me, and then that one I had to sell when I had to buy one of my wheelchairs or one of my assistive devices. But the one gift I actually bought this afternoon, a friend of mine is a pretty popular Twitch streamer, and I know her family and I know her sister. And she took a picture a few weeks ago at an astronaut exhibit somewhere in Edmonton, I think. And this person has always had an interest in space. So I had a Canadian Space Agency official mission patch patterned after Commander Hadfield, who's the astronaut who sings in space, and it says her last name. So unofficially, she's part of the Canadian Space Agency, and I've actually reached out to several real astronauts to see if they'll write her a letter for Christmas just to encourage her to keep pursuing science if that's what she wants to do, but always keep that curiosity going. But yeah, so I got those patches today, and I should have them ready in a couple of weeks.
Okay. There's one more that I want to talk about just because I like the joke that's associated with it. So I commissioned a couple of rings. One that I wear on my index fingers. One is a blue cobalt ring with the logos of each of the franchises that are represented in Super Smash Brothers on it, and the other is a silver tungsten one that just has the Hylian royal family logo and the Triforce alternating. But the joke that I got with it is that, one of the things that always irritates me, it's sort of a social pet peeve of mine. Have you ever worn like a piece of jewelry or something out and people kind of go, wow, that's really cool. Can I see it? And then you go to show it to them. They're like, oh no, can you take it off and hand it to me? Well, that shit really fucking irritates me. So the guy that I got these rings made from, he does custom engraves. So I got him to engrave on the inside of each ring, give me back my ring, asshole. So if anybody ever asks me to take off my ring to show it to them, they're going to see that and they're going to, they're gonna, hey man, I warned you, shouldn't have done that. So yeah. All right. And that's all the nerd. Try that again.
And we're done early.
And that's all the Ask Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending them in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. Love getting your questions. Love reading them on the air. So get your questions in, and you just might get yours read on the show. All right, and with that, we're going to jump right into our discussion topic, which is our favorite childhood cartoons. Now, we've talked about many cartoons over the course of our time on the show, but we've never actually sat down and talked about which cartoons were our favorites and why. So we thought that it would be fun and just kind of a light and easy topic as we kind of wind down to the end of this year to kind of talk about just our favorite cartoons and, why they resonate so much with us. So, yeah, let's just jump right into it. So, Kat, why don't you go first?
Cool. So this was actually one of my suggestion topics, and the reason that I wanted to talk about it is because we do a lot of bitching on this show, like any other podcast. And I really wanted us to talk about things that we truly love so that we could kind of end the year after two kind of long miserable years that the world has had in sort of a positive light by talking about things that we really like. So I wanted to talk today for a cartoon that I loved as a kid, especially a very young kid, was She-Ra, the original series. Now, granted, my childhood was a little bit weird because I lived on a lot of military bases and we didn't have a lot of television, so we were stuck watching a lot of if we had a VHS of something, we watched that until we moved to the United States again, which didn't happen when I was very young. So we had the tape for I called it the She-Ra movie when I was a kid, but it was like the first episodes of She-Ra were the crossover with He-Man to introduce the character. And I watched that about a million times as a kid. No particular reason. I think it was just one of the things that we had. Like one of the videotapes of cartoons that we actually had that wasn't like Care Bears or something. And I just loved She-Ra. I loved this like evil twin kind of trope that it had. I love this bad guy turned good trope that it had. Hey, look, we're revisiting the tropes conversation. I loved Skeletor just being such a doofus, Hordak being such a doofus. I loved these silly villains and like the high stakes fights and stuff. At the time, I loved the character designs. Now, not so much. But again, it was one of these things where it was like one of the only cartoons that was out there where it was like a girl kicking butt on the screen, on the little screen. So it was, you know, my brother would watch He-Man and I would, well, if we had any of it, which I'm not sure how much we had, but for sure just watching She-Ra over and over, because here's a girl who's on screen and she was a bad guy and now she's a good guy and she's doing the right thing and she's the hero and she gets to go around with a sword. And how many cartoons starring girls had swords? Like nothing had that sort of female lead. And like as an adult, I recognized that this was just so that they could market like these toys to girls. But I really, really loved this as a kid. It was so unique, and again, one of the only things I had available to me in my very, very young years. But I loved it so much. My mom must have hated it, like for the number of times that it was watched in our household.
One of the things,
She-Ra was a cool. Oh, sorry. Gonga.
one of the things that I kind of want to swing back on your point about how it was unique, especially when you look at the state of what would be considered girls' television in the 80s. Like you said, it was because like you said, this show was meant to sell toys, but it was somewhat unique in that it actually, for its time, it actually told actual stories with character and plot, whereas you look at just about any other girls show in the 80s, especially in the 80s, you know, you look at stuff like, you know, My Little Pony, the Care Bears, or Strawberry Shortcake, where it's just this insipid stuff that like just like really maybe this is just my perspective as a guy, but I really kind of feel like that it sort of talked down to its intended audience.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And She-Ra is kind of unique to me, as it's the only 80s quote unquote girls show that I found that didn't actually talk down to its intended demographic.
I would say Gem and the Holograms was pretty ahead of its time.
I was gonna say that's why like people of my like our generation love Gem and they love She-Ra, because these were the sort of shows that for our generation sort of stood out, that they were just wholly completely different from everything else. Because a lot of the cartoons aimed at young girls like ages 5 to 10 are anthropomorphized animals whose every episode is just somebody learning a lesson. Now in She-Ra, everybody learns a lesson at the end of the episode, like so much syndicated television cartoons. But it does it with cool fights with bad guys, and the stakes are so much higher in a show like that because they're trying to save the world from an evil army of guys, and it's like, okay, cool, this is way more, it feels more important. Gem and the Holograms, not quite that high stakes, but it's just so, Gem is so different. Gem is just a totally different vibe, and it mostly, I think, boils down to the characters that we were watching were adults. They were young adults who had like grown up lives, who were doing jobs and saving the world. And everything else we were watching was this like kind of pure, sanitized, here to send a message, or like characters that we don't think of as adults, even though they might not be like little kids. When we think of My Little Ponies, we don't go like, oh, this pony, like that gen My Little Ponies. Like, we weren't thinking like, oh, these are kids, these are adults. We are supposed to relate to these and look up to these. Like, She-Ra was just all characters who were all older than the audience. So it's like you just look up to them. You want to be them when you grow up. Whereas a lot of stuff like My Little Pony, you learn a good lesson at the end of the day. Whereas like She-Ra, we want to idolize because we want to get that toy. Like, that's what they wanted to do, but it worked. And I still like, I've rewatched a lot of She-Ra, and it's real bad, guys. It's real bad, but I still will always have this place in my heart for it, no matter what.
I thought She-Ra had cooler designs for their bad guys. I mean, as cool as Skeletor looks, Hordak I felt was a bigger threat, and the Horde Troopers was the first toy I ever army built. Like, I would go to the store looking for Horde Troopers because She-Ra toys looked cooler in that regard. I think I had She-Ra, I had Bo, I can't remember the horse's name. The Pegasus.
Swiftwind.
Yeah, I had him, and obviously I had Hordak, the suction cup dude, and a bunch of Horde Troopers.
Yeah.
And She-Ra also had a pretty bitchin' theme song.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, so that show was awesome. Filmation did a wonderful job with it, and it did raise the bar for children's television for young girls, because outside of that, the only other cartoon I can think that was aimed at girls at the time outside of Gem, there was a show, this was like late 70s, it was called Goldie Gold, and it's, holy shit, it is something else.
Well,
so yeah.
we're getting kind of sidetracked.
Yeah.
So,
But anyway, go on. I'm done.
So yeah, that's the cartoon I wanted to talk about, because it's even relevant today with the new She-Ra series that came out, and how that is kind of like raising its own bar for a new generation. Our bar was not very high back in the the late 80s and the mid to late 80s and the early 90s. The bar was not very high, like, because there was so little. I mean, there was tons of cartoons out there, but not very much quality. Now there's a lot of quality cartoons out there that are good for all ages, and the bar is a lot higher than it used to be. And the new She-Ra series is incredibly good, and I'm glad that young people out there can watch it and have the same wonderful experience that I had with She-Ra today.
okay. All right. Well, Mike, you're next, and I'm going to curse you throughout your entire spiel because you actually took my choice. So,
Oh,
yeah.
if you want me to switch, I can do so right now because I can talk about a million things.
No, I went with my backup. So
Okay, cool.
I've got a
So
good backup.
the one that I picked was Transformers Generation 1. So I'm 40 years old. I am right in the prime time of G1. I've owned multiple versions of the toys. My first mail away was Reflector, which is the Decepticon camera. But I had a lot of these, but I never got an Optimus Prime until technically the White Cab with Ultra Magnus. But anyway, I started watching this show not too long after it premiered in 1984. And I just have a lot of really good memories with this. I associate a lot of it with the toys that I had, because I remember getting Metroplex for my birthday one year and really loving him. And I just remember seeing the movie, which I watched at a friend's house, my best friend Quincy's house, and we must have watched the Transformers movie like 30 times in one weekend. And I remember when Megatron and Starscream execute, when they kill Brawn, Ratchet, Ironhide, and my favorite Transformer of the time, Prowl. When Prowl gets shot in the chest and the smoke rises out of his eyes and his mouth, my childhood decided to stop fucking around in that moment. And when Megatron became Galvatron, I was like, holy shit. And the fact that G1 kept the continuity going after the movie. It didn't do that didn't happen, alternate reality. No, there was Rodimus Prime, there was Hot Rod, there was Cup, Blur, RC, Springer, all these other characters, plus some kind of legacy characters like Bumblebee and Blaster and Jazz. But you had these new characters with the bad guys. You had Galvatron, Cyclonus, Scourge, the entire army of sweeps, and occasionally you would see Insecticons in the background who are dead, but hey, they're all clones anyway, right? And the series would go and mine its own kind of lore and get really, 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 really into it with defining the origins of the Transformers with a series, 5-part miniseries. I'd never seen this done in television in the 80s. If it did happen, it was rare outside of pilots. 5 Faces of Darkness, where they talk about the Quintessons and how they created Cybertron and the Transformers. And then that ties into how they can bring back Optimus Prime at the end of season 3 with the return of Optimus Prime and all of that. And then season 4, which is only 3 episodes, leads into the Headmaster series, where there's Target Masters, which are enhanced weapons, Headmasters, which are literally a robot takes over, or a Nebulon takes over your head, and you become a more powerful Transformer as a result. It was something I'd never seen lore expanded. I'd never seen a character truly change, because Spike grew up, and then he had a son named Daniel. I saw a guy in a wheelchair, Chip. I'd never seen that before, outside of like the Burger King Kids Club. I saw just so much cool stuff. Now, much like Kat, when you go back and look at Transformers G1, is it art? No. And in fact, one of the countries is called Carbomia. So you can guess how bad that went over in 1980 something. And that's what led Casey Kasem to leave the show, the voice of Cliffjumper. And it was something else. And it wasn't until years later I got back in the Transformers by watching Beast Wars one night, which in Canada was known as Beasties, because you can't have the word war in a title. That's obviously now changed. But yeah, my love with the Transformers franchise has run deep for many, many years. My second ever tattoo on my left bicep is a Autobot symbol. So I've been in love with this franchise for years. I still buy certain Transformers whenever I can afford them. Thank you, Hasbro. I just got a bunch for review. So yeah, it's fantastic to still love this show like 40 years later and know the franchise is only going to get better from here, hopefully, because those Bay movies, oof. But Bumblebee was fucking great, and I will die on that hill every day.
Yeah, I watched the G1 Transformers cartoon when I was a kid too. It's actually one of the few 80s cartoons that I actually got to watch on television, because by the time I was old enough to watch and really appreciate cartoons, a lot of that stuff from the 80s had gone off the air. Like He-Man was off the air, G.I. Joe was off the air. But the only reason I was able to watch the G1 Transformers cartoon was because, and this is something that not a lot of people know or really remember, but in the early 90s, Hasbro decided to re-release and rebrand Transformers as Generation 2. And the first wave was basically just a bunch of re-releases of the G1 toys, which, side note, my favorite birthday gift ever was the Generation 2 repackaging of Optimus Prime, which I still have to this day.
Laser Prime?
No, it was the G1 Optimus Prime. But it was just in a new package.
Okay,
and
cool.
It had and the only thing that they really added was on the trailer there was another electronic piece that would slot into the front of the trailer that had voice clips if you push one of the buttons.
I always wanted that one because it looks so cool.
Yeah, no, that's the one I got as a kid. But they also repackaged the G1 Transformers cartoon. With this weird CGI space cube thing that was in the show opening and handled all the scene transitions. Look up clips of this on YouTube. It's fucking trippy as hell. Looking at it now, it's all kind of ridiculous and silly. But watching it like as a kid, I thought this was like the coolest thing in the world because they would do things like, let's say a character is talking from off screen. Like, say, there's one episode in particular where the camera's focused on Devastator,
Mm-hmm.
and Megatron is talking off screen about this plan that he has, and there's this little like CGI frame that opens up in the corner, and it's got Megatron talking. It's basically just a rerun clip of Megatron speaking from elsewhere in the episode, but it was this neat little picture-in-picture moment that like just blew my mind as a kid. But the thing that I always loved the most about G1 Transformers was always Optimus Prime. He was my hero as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of like my moral code was defined by Optimus Prime. So like it was it's hard for me to describe the impact that Transformers and that character has had on me, and it's to the point where now I get kind of defensive, I guess, whenever I see Optimus Prime portrayed in a new way on screen. Like Kat will tell you, when we did our review of the third Transformers movie, I think it was Dark of the Moon, where the end of the movie, Optimus Prime executes Megatron like gangster style. That really upset me because like Optimus Prime has never been he's never been an executioner. That's not who he is. That's not the kind of bot that he is. And then with the fourth film where he kills the main human villain, he just leans over and pops him. That was the point where I punched out of the Bay movies. I was like, that's it. No, I'm not watching these anymore. They're doing my man Prime dirty.
That was the only time in a theater where I didn't mean for it to come out as loud as it did, but I threw up my hands and went, "What the fuck?" when he killed that guy. And the theater had a really good laugh at that.
Yeah.
I nerd raged. Forgot about that.
So yeah, but the other cartoon that was really formative for me growing up was the 1992 Batman the Animated Series, which like, God, where do you even begin with how impactful this cartoon was? Not just like on its own, but the legacy that it has that we're still feeling like even to this day. So like for context, like the previous Batman cartoons, had been the Filmation like Super Friends stuff that was all very kind of, cheesy and, kind of taking its cues from the Adam West series. So 1992, Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns had just finished. You had the first two Michael Keaton Batman movies. So Batman was kind of starting to take more of a serious turn. And then you had Batman the Animated Series come out. And prior to this, I had just watched, the only Batman that I'd really watched was the Adam West show. I watched that with my dad in reruns. So the hang on a second. I need to silence Facebook because my girlfriend is messaging me. Hang on, let me just. So okay. Anyway, yeah, so the only Batman I'd seen prior to this was the Adam West series. So when they announced that there was a Batman cartoon show, I was absolutely ecstatic, because it was new Batman stories. Now, like, I hadn't read any of the comics at this point, so I didn't, I was kind of expecting more of the Adam West style stuff. But what I got was so much more. It's kind of like going back to what we said earlier about She-Ra. It was a show that didn't talk down to its audience. It was a show that presented, serious Batman stories and trusted its audience to be able to follow along and find enjoyment in these stories. And it was so successful at it that for a time, this cartoon was actually shown on prime time. Like, it wasn't just like Saturday morning cartoon. This was actually this show was actually shown on prime time on Fox for like a year or so. And some of the the series to this day still defines so much of Batman for me. Like, Kevin Conroy will always be Batman. Mark Hamill will always be the Joker to me. And it was a show that wasn't afraid to also get a little scary. Like, the one that really stands out in my mind was this episode where there's the supercomputer Hardak who builds robots, and he kind of does this like Invasion of the Body Snatchers plot where he kidnaps people to replace them with robots. And there's a scene where Batman's fighting one of these robots, and he winds up damaging the face of the robot, and you see the mechanical skull underneath. That was the first time that I'd ever seen robots portrayed that way, like ever. Like all the other robots that I'd seen up to that point were like, the Lost Space Danger, Will Robinson, Robbie the Robot type shit. But this is the first time I saw like, robot endoskeleton, and that really just like frightened me as a kid. And it's a show that really I feel stands the test of time because of just the level of effort that went into the stories and the characters and the presentation. And it's really fascinating to go and look at some of the production history of this. So the series, one of the things that they wanted to do with the series was to have a very kind of Art Deco noir atmosphere to it. So in addition to how things were drawn in sort of 1930s and 40s Art Deco style, they also drew all the backgrounds on black paper instead of white. Well, one of the side effects of that is, any dust particles or debris that wound up getting caught on the paper when they took the photo for the cell wound up getting caught on camera and appearing in the show. So you would see occasionally like these white spots appear on the picture from like the dust, and it actually made the show, it actually improved the presentation. It made the show feel like you were watching, a film reel. And it's really just, I could go on about Batman the Animated Series for hours. So it's like, I'm gonna stop now and let other people say stuff, because like I said, I could just carry on for hours about how much I love this show.
I remember very, very distinctly watching Fox Kids on Saturday morning, and they were promoting that Batman the Animated Series was going to premiere on Monday at 4:30 p.m. on your local Fox affiliate. And I remember watching that and being really, really impressed. And my parents would always hog the TV where I couldn't watch anything until either they went to bed or I was up before them. And that was the only show they'd let me watch during their TV time, was Batman. And there are 2 episodes of the show that stand out for me as being something different in children's television. There's an episode where there's this little girl who isn't a little girl. She kidnaps her television family because she's known as like an aging TV star, but she's perpetually
Baby doll,
like,
yeah,
baby doll. And when she hugs Batman and says, "I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to grow up," that broke my heart as a child. And I just remember thinking, I've never considered that veil of storytelling. I think this is only a brief scene. I don't know whether it came from the animated series or Justice League, which came afterwards. It's where this little girl is given powers and she works for the Royal Flush Gang, but she's gonna die. And Batman and her.
Yeah, I know the episode you're talking about. That's epilogue, and that's from Justice League.
Yeah.
And yeah, she had that you're talking about Ace, who was the result of a genetic experiment that gave her psionic powers, but the powers were killing her. And yeah, she knows that her death is coming, and she's instead of causing hell for her last moment, she just says to Batman, just, "Would you sit with me? I'm scared." And Batman just sits with her and holds her hand until she passes away. Yeah. But like, that's the kind, even though that's kind of that's a different series, but yeah, that's the kind of writing and emotional pathos that started with Batman the Animated Series. One of my favorite moments in the series, on a similar vein, was there's a 2-parter called Robin's Reckoning. And it's in the plot of that episode, Robin has tracked down Tony Zuko, the guy who wound up killing his parents, the Flying Graysons. Which, by the way, the Graysons' death scene where they're on the trapeze and they swing out of camera, and then the only thing that you see is the cut rope swinging back into frame. That still gives me chills to this day. But there's a scene at the end of that 2-parter where after Zuko gets arrested and Robin is just chewing Batman's ass out because Batman wouldn't let him work on this case, even though it was so personal to him and so important to Robin. And Batman's like, "Look, the reason why I kept you out of this wasn't because, I didn't trust you. I didn't think you could do it. But it's because, Zuko took so much away from you that I was scared to death that he would take you too. And to see, as a kid, you look at Batman and it's like, he's this larger than life figure. Like, he's as close to God as you can get for a kid. But to see Batman actually, like, be vulnerable and admit that, like, look, I was scared of losing you. Like, that was a really big moment for me as a kid.
Yeah, that show didn't pull any punches, and we'd seen people get, people die on that show. You saw real relationships between people, and you saw Batman hurting. Like, I remember episodes where, him and Alfred would, like, kind of quip back and forth, like, oh, Master Bruce, you going out on a date tonight? I don't have time for that, Alfred. The city needs him, or some other bullshit like that. But you saw that it got to him. Kevin Conroy gave him some real depth, and I only knew Kevin Conroy before this from a television show called Medal of Honor, which my dad used to watch. And there was something so well about this entire voice cast that it is pretty, like, Batman the Animated Series. I would gladly go on record. This show changed children's television forever, because the Marvel stuff at the time, which was X-Men and Spider-Man, never got to these levels. Did they come close? Maybe once or twice. But Batman, there are lists about what are the 10 best Batman the Animated Series episodes. Can you do that with the Fox X-Men series? Maybe, but episodes like Batman would make you cry, would make you think. The fact that thing sticks with you, Gonzo, is the testament to that. The only thing I can think of from X-Men is all the memes that have come out of it. And yeah, there's Batman holding his hand, but you can ask more people, what did Batman the Animated Series mean to you, and you'll get more responses than memes, I think. And DC animation has almost consistently killed it over the years. There hasn't been a really bad Batman show the entire time that I can think of. Maybe some underrated ones like Beware the Batman, but everything has been great. And you can't say that about many IPs.
Okay, Kat, you've been quiet. Anything to add or questions or comments?
Yeah, I was actually going to say I didn't watch either Transformers G1 or Batman the Animated Series, but my understanding of Batman the Animated Series is that it has actually set the bar for all Batman everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you had that old live action series from the 60s, it was very silly. It was very silly because people only knew comics to be these silly little frivolous things. So when they stylized the show, they made it very frivolous and silly. And you had villains in it, but like there was no stakes. So when this series came around, this became the definitive, like, this is the bar that you have to match. Like, in terms of all future Batmans must be this. Now, I don't. When did the Michael Keaton movie come out?
1989.
Yeah, 1989.
Yes. So that one's a little together, set the bar for Batman, because what Bat fans wanted was that TV series. That's what everybody who loved Batman had been watching, this cartoon, and was like, this is it. This is what I want. You want that in depth. You want these bombastic villains. You want the tragedy. You want all of these things. And oh my God, my cat is scratching at the door and being an obnoxious little goblin. Anyway, so to me, that's what set the bar for all other things. All the Hey, you goblin! He's scratching all my furniture because he's mad because he can't get out of my room because he took a nap right before we started recording, and now he's stuck in here because I can't get up. Anyway, this is just a glimpse into the life of a cat owner. Pippin, shut up for like 5 more minutes. Sorry, interlude. So anyway, yes, in terms of like all future Batman franchisees, everything, like that was it. That was the bar that you had to reach. was either that
Yeah,
first
and-
movie or that TV series.
And it speaks to how much the stars aligned on this show, that that legacy is carried through to even non-television Batman projects. So like Batman Arkham Asylum, the game that set the standard for licensed superhero games. What do? They brought back Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, and had the story written by Paul Dini, who wrote most of the really great episodes of the animated series. So it says something that that to the staying power of this show and the legacy that it has, that we're still kind of going back to that here we are almost 30 years later. So yeah. But that is all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week, and those are our favorite cartoons. So yeah, sound off in the comments. What are your favorite childhood cartoons, and why? Go ahead and sound off, make yourself heard. And yeah, we will see you guys next time. Thank you as always for tuning in. I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
Transform and roll out.
All right, we'll see you next time. Taka, play us out.